This video is on photosynthesis and forms part of the cells as the basis of life topic. Under the student learning outcomes for this part of the course, we're looking at how cells get their energy and looking at the difference between autotrophs and heterotrophs and how plants use photosynthesis to create high energy molecules. Alright, so let's look at those first two terms. Autotrophs and heterotrophs. So autotrophs make their own food, heterotrophs obtain food from other organisms. And generally, when we're looking at autotrophs, we might be talking about plants, although some microorganisms are also autotrophs. So the initial source of energy here is light energy from the sun. They use a process of photosynthesis to turn that light energy into chemical energy, stored in the bonds of high energy food molecules such as glucose. They then use the process of respiration to convert that chemical energy to a different type of chemical energy that cells can use, called cellular energy, or stored in the molecule ATP. Heterotrophs, their energy journey starts with consuming and digesting other organisms. So this is plants and fungi, cells and some other microorganisms might use chemical energy from other organisms that they've digested to produce high energy food molecules. So they need to consume energy that's produced in plants eventually. So all energy comes from the sun. Plants are able to make that into chemical energy and use that themselves. Heterotrophs have to take that chemical energy from the plants or from something that has consumed plants. Once they've got that, they use respiration just like plants do to produce their cellular energy. So the light energy, basically the light from the sun, some energy from the heat of the earth, but basically the light from the sun is our main source of energy on the planet that drives photosynthesis in chloroplasts, and that's able to combine the CO2 and water to make oxygen and glucose. And then that glucose, either from chloroplasts or, as I said, from consumption and digestion, gets combined with oxygen in mitochondria to produce CO2 and water, but also chemical energy comes out and is used by cells, whether they're plant or animal cells. So in terms of looking at the chemical equations for that, photosynthesis actually requires many chemical reactions, but in order to simplify it, we don't show all of those at once. We tend to show what we call a summary reaction that just shows the inputs and outputs, and at this level for year 12 we're looking at a balanced chemical reaction for that. So what we have here is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combines with 6 molecules of water, using light as the energy and chlorophyll as the catalyst to produce 1 molecule of glucose, C6H12O6, and 6 molecules of oxygen. So the process of photosynthesis is called endergonic, which meaning we need to put energy in. So that energies come from the light, and we can draw that in a graph like this. So the reactants, meaning the carbon dioxide and the water, have low energy. With the use of light, we're putting energy into those to break bonds when they form. We release some of that energy, but not as much as we put in. And so the products end up with more energy in them than the reactants did. So the glucose is where that energy is stored. So the light energy that was put in is now stored as bonds in the glucose molecule. And the reason for, of course, doing photosynthesis is to create glucose with high energy bonds in it that plants or things that eat plants can then extract that energy later on and use it for cells. So in terms of plants, the glucose is either used directly or stored by polymerizing that glucose into long chains that we call starch. So starch is a polymer of lots of glucose molecules that the plant can then use later on. Of course, animals such as ourselves want to find ways to get energy, and a really easy way to do it is to eat plants, especially those that have a lot of starch in them. So for instance, the starch grains in wheat or in potatoes, anything that's white like your rice, that's got a high content of starch in it. We eat those high carbohydrate foods. They've got lots of starch, lots of glucose in that starch. We break that down through digestion and get lots of glucose for our cells. This is covered in chapter 9, pages 77 to 79. There's also a couple of videos there that can explain the process as well.